Thank you all very much. Happy holidays to all.
Well, you've just been listening to U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi a day after the House voted to impeach U.S. President Donald Trump on the two charges, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Now, she said people had a spring in their step and she felt there was some bipartisan support. She went on to say, though, that there are other pressing matters with the Mexico-U.S. trade deal, lowering pharmaceutical costs and reforming gun laws, expanding background checks. And she went on to call her counterpart in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, the Grim Reaper. But on the news of the moment, the impeachment of Donald Trump in the House, she offered little detail. And this comes just moments after the U.S. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell chastised the impeachment process. Take a listen.
Over the last 12 weeks, House Democrats have conducted the most rushed, least thorough, and most unfair impeachment inquiry in modern history. Now, their slapdash process has concluded in the first purely partisan presidential impeachment since the wake of the Civil War.
An historic day. We're going to cover all of this and break it down for you after a very short break. Stay with us. You're watching CNN. Welcome back. You're watching Connect the World. I'm Lynda Kinkade. We just heard from the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi a day after the House voted to impeach President Donald Trump on two counts: obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. I've got a panel standing by. CNN legal analyst Ellie Honig is in New York. Our Suzanne Malveaux is on Capitol Hill. And White House correspondent Boris Sanchez also joining us from outside the White House. Good to have you all with us. I want to start with you, Boris, because that was certainly interesting listening to Nancy Pelosi just moments ago, giving very little details the day after such an historic vote impeaching the president in the House. She wanted to talk about everything other than the impeachment.
Yeah, that's right, Linda. She sort of chided reporters who wanted to ask questions about impeachment, insisting that they talk about trade, USMCA, and the deal to fund the government over the course of the next year. I should point out the president tweeted as Nancy Pelosi was speaking, accusing the House Speaker of making this phony impeachment so pathetic that she's afraid to present it to the Senate. He says that the Senate can set a date to put this whole scam to bed, but ultimately the Democrats are not allowing the Senate to do that. Clearly the president wants to put this behind him. He gave a speech last night in Michigan. President going 2 hours fully enraged, blasting Democrats, accusing them again of putting their own personal political priorities before the American people, telling his supporters that they should vote Nancy Pelosi out of office, also lambasting Democrats with a slew of crude comments, some about Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, also about Hillary and Bill Clinton, and some of his most appalling comments were made toward Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, whose husband passed away earlier this year, former Congressman John Dingell. The president insinuating that she was ungrateful for the measures he took in celebrating the life of the former congressman by voting for impeachment. The president obviously taking this very personally, Linda.
Yeah, no doubt at all. Boris, just stand by for us. I want to bring in Suzanne Malveaux because just a short time ago we heard from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who seemed to have a smile on his face as he listed the ways that Democrats had looked to impeach the U.S. president before he even really entered office. Take a listen.
They tried to impeach President Trump for being impolite to the press, for being mean to professional athletes, for changing President Obama's policy on transgender people in the military. All of these things were high crimes and misdemeanors, according to Democrats.
Certainly this vote to impeach Donald Trump in the House very much along partisan lines, not one Republican supporting it.
Lynda, one thing that the Senate Majority Leader did not mention in that is that each one of those attempts when articles of impeachment came up was struck down by the Democrats, by the majority of Democrats who said, no, this does not rise to the level of impeachment. It was only the situation regarding Ukraine in which Leader Pelosi and others came around to see this picture and thought that it was a completely legitimate exercise. I do want to talk a little bit about what we just heard from Pelosi, because I think she's trying to accomplish three things. The first thing is that she certainly, I think the Democrats need a rest. They want to get out of town. She said happy holidays to all of us several times. And so, just a few questions here, because these can go long, and it's clear that they need a break. They want to take a break. But the second thing, of course, is that she's also trying to show and make the case that Democrats are not just about impeachment. They're about getting the people's work done. She talked about the trade agreement. She talked about all those bills that are sitting on Senate Majority Mitch McConnell's desk that are not getting accomplished. And then the third thing that she is trying to do, and she is trying to explain it in the best way she can here, is the process that's involved. Yes, the president has been impeached, and it is her job to send those articles of impeachment over to the Senate for the trial. There are some who are definitely advocating, let's take a breather here and see what we can do to leverage that so that we can get what we want out of the Senate trial, which would be more witnesses, more documents, that type of thing. So she is not rushing the process. How she's justifying it, however, is she's saying that before she introduces the House managers, the Democrats that will present this case against the president, she has to have kind of the full picture of what this Senate trial would look like. So she picks the right people on the right number. Some people will take a look at that and say, okay, that's legitimate. Others will see a little bit of the politics behind it as well, that there is some maneuvering that is going on behind the scenes for them to try to get what they need and what they want out of the next stage of this impeachment trial, if you will.
You're absolutely right. Nancy Pelosi certainly did not want to go ahead with impeachment, calling it a sad day. She doesn't want to be remembered for it whatsoever. Suzanne, just stand by for us. I want to go to Ellie on this next point, because I want to bring up a clip from Donald Trump, who gave an interview to CNN back in 2008 advocating for the impeachment of another president. Take a listen.
And I'm very impressed by her. I think she's a very impressive person. I like her a lot. But I was surprised that she didn't do more in terms of Bush and going after Bush. It was almost, it just seemed like she was going to really look to impeach Bush and get him out of office, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing.
Impeaching him?
Absolutely, for the war. For the war.
Because of the conduct of the war.
Well, he lied. He got us into the war with lies.
So clearly back then, Donald Trump supported impeachment, just not for himself. Looking at this case, Nancy Pelosi and her role going forward, she is looking to delay handing over the articles of impeachment to the Senate. Just how long can she delay this? How do you see this playing out?
Ultimately, I do not think this is a winning strategy. I think what Nancy Pelosi is fighting for here is absolutely worth fighting for, which is let's have a meaningful trial in the Senate. Let's have witnesses. Doesn't seem like that extreme of a position. Let's have witnesses at a trial. But I don't think holding back the articles is going to do the trick. Our Constitution says nothing about that either way. All our Constitution actually says is the Senate shall have the sole power of impeachment. And I think Mitch McConnell would be probably well-grounded legally in saying sole power means we are doing this on our own. I think Mitch McConnell has a fairly easy couple of counter moves here. One, he can say, fine, hold your articles of impeachment forever. Good on you. I don't think that's a winning strategy for Pelosi. Or second, he can say, I'm setting a deadline. I want your articles, I want the articles and your managers by December 25th, by January 1st. And if you don't send them, then we won't have a trial. I don't think either of those are winning strategies for the Democrats.
All right, Ellie, I just want to mention the response we're seeing from some of the Democratic presidential candidates who are obviously going to, one of which will face off against Donald Trump next year. They've all been taking to Twitter, and I want this question probably to Suzanne, because Joe Biden has been calling it a solemn day for America. Bernie Sanders calling it a sad but necessary day for American democracy. Clearly all pretty reluctant. And to you, Suzanne, we saw last night Nancy Pelosi actually put her hand up to try to stop any Democrats clapping or cheering this process.
That was a very interesting moment to actually see that because, yes, she has been coaching and encouraging the members not to be gleeful about this. That is not a celebratory occasion, but there was that outburst that you saw from some of the Democrats. And, you know, the quick, thing that she did with the finger in the eyes really kind of made them a little bit pushed back and subdued. And I think that's the tone that she is trying to set here. She talks about it as being prayerful and somber, and she wants to keep it that way. It's, we've seen a lot of the drama. We've seen a lot of emotion over the last couple of weeks and with these hearings and the House proceedings and all of this. And I do think that she's trying to bring some decorum to this. We heard from Senator Chuck Schumer earlier today saying that, is this moving forward in the Senate going to be a fair process, or is it going to be free reign for the president? And so you're hearing kind of the language where they are trying to tone it down. I did note as well McConnell earlier today saying that he was waiting for Speaker Pelosi to get her house in order before she dumps the mess onto the Senate. And I do think that there's an effort, at least that some are making, to tone down the kind of harsh rhetoric that we've been hearing on both sides.
All right, it was an interesting moment. I can just imagine Speaker Pelosi addressing her grandchildren or children like that, like, don't do it. All right, Suzanne Malveaux, Boris Sanchez, Ellie Honig, good to have you all with us. Thanks so much.
Happy holidays.
You too. All right, stay with us. We're going to have some breaking news out of Moscow when we come back. There has been a shooting in the Russian capital. CNN's Fred Plackton is standing by with the details on that. Don't go anywhere.